Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new series of podcasts in our HPC Systems general series. And this one, of course, is around our 10 years anniversary. Today, we have someone that needs no introduction. As you can see, this is Dan Camper. He's been with the community since almost the inception of the community. He has been involved in so many areas. His brain and his hands have touched so many projects around HPCC systems, integration, even other projects outside of that. And his expertise comes from a number of areas, from programming languages to data manipulation to data science. So welcome, Dan, and it's great to have you here. I think this is going to be yet another great episode. So, Dan, first of all, let's come up with the how everything came to be, right? How did you get involved with HPC systems? Where did you know about it? Back then, when you got involved, there wasn't much advertisement or community around it or anything else. So how did it happen?
By accident. So, and that's actually a true story. So in my previous job, I was up on Google or one of the other search engines, and I was looking for something else, something not related to HPCC. But whatever the search terms that I used, HPCC did wind up on the first page of the results because I rarely go past page one. But I wound up and I followed a link and I started reading about it. And the more I read, the more interested I got and did some more research, downloaded it and gave it a whirl. And that's where it all started.
Wow. That's, you know, how many great things start with just a coincidence or some just luck, pure luck. But so when you started, when you gave it a whirl and you tried it the first time, did you have any particular problem that you are trying to solve with HPCC or?
Well, not a particular problem, no. Where I worked before, we dealt with a lot of data, or what to us at the time seemed to be a lot of data. One of the more interesting things that I learned when I got familiar with HPCC is the concept of big data to HPCC and to us at the time were two very different things, probably an order of magnitude different. But we had databases with millions of records, or lots of tables with millions of records, and putting some of that together was painful, and it was part of my job. Like I said, at the time I was searching for something else, but when I saw HPCC, it was a natural fit mentally, and that's why I did pursue it, because I wanted to see if it was another tool that I could use to help solve some of the problems we had, and it did very well. It did very well.
That is great to hear. So, and perhaps just for others to know a little bit more about you, would you mind telling the community a little bit about your background and what you like to do, your skills and your experience in general?
Sure. So I've actually been programming computers professionally for a little over 40 years now,
Wow.
Which is scary. And when I say professionally, I'm saying the first time I got paid to write software. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt. But it's still been 40 years. I have worked for Apple. I worked over 7 or 8 years. This is a while back, but I did work there. I ran my own company, did custom software, did websites, went through the .com boom and bust. That was all fun stuff there.
Like many of us.
Yeah. Worked for Dun & Bradstreet for a while, and then I've worked here. I've worked here with LexisNexis Risk Solutions for about 7 years now, almost, since 2014.
That's very cool. And what aspect of programming do you like the most? What type of things do you get thrilled by?
Well, so lately I've been working on languages and the interaction of programmers, their IDEs, the languages, and the data in which we are working. And coming from HPCC, it's big data too. So I've been working with designing kind of a new programming environment that encompasses not only what you're typing, but the data you are attempting to manipulate. And you can do a lot of things in real time with it. So as you're typing in real time, inspect the data that you will be running jobs against and see how it works in different panes of your IDE, and trying to bring out the interactions that I think I need while I'm trying to write code, trying to bring that to the forefront and see if I'm more productive.
Very cool. That sounds like a very cool project.
Let's hope it works. That'd be fun.
Of course it will. But you know what? The fact that it works or not at the end is just, to me, is secondary. The fun is in doing it, actually. Getting there.
It is a lot of fun.
Yes.
And probably, I think I mentioned earlier, I built it up and torn it down 10 or 15 times. And that's not a bad thing. I learn every time I do it, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So it's good. It's good.
Very good. So, and so, Dan, you've been involved with HPC systems for a very long time. So, how do you find the evolution of HPC systems since back in the early days? I don't remember which version you came originally to be, but it's probably 3.6 or something like that.
3.8.
Or 3.8, there you go, yeah. 3.8. And now it's almost version 8, and many things change. So what do you see? And of course, by the way, you influence many of those changes as well. So you have a little bit of ownership in some of the changes. So what do you think is the evolution of HPCC doing and going towards, right? What do you see in the future as well?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, is movement towards the cloud environment. I mean, being able to execute this system in a cloud environment that is much more dynamically scalable than in the past is really, really exciting. HPCC has a lot of strengths. The declarative language and the speed of the execution engines and how well things are designed are all tremendous pluses. When you add in the dynamic scaling capabilities of Kubernetes running in a cloud, or even, could be an internal cloud, external cloud, whatever, but making it dynamically scalable, size per job or whatever, is going to be a game changer. I really do think. That's what I'm looking forward to for the future.
Yeah, I agree. You're absolutely right. Yeah, if there is one of those constraints that comes from the past, is the default static geometry of any HPC systems cluster.
Yeah.
If you get over that boundary, and now you can unleash clusters that essentially are sized as appropriate for the particular job or the size of the data that you need to manipulate, the possibilities are really endless. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I'm looking forward to.
Hey, and on your LexisNexis side, and without getting into anything that is confidential there, but you've been driving lots of projects around HPCC systems open source. So what are the latest projects that you've been involved in? What are those open source things that you've been doing or helping release or push out?
That's a good question. I have my fingers in a lot of various things. I mean, there's a lot of different projects going along.
Well, I just, for starters, and I can give you a hint there, maybe the data profiling piece that you've been working on for some time, and that got integrated in a number of other areas, including ECL Watch and others. So.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if how big of a project you were talking about. Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest and longest running projects that I've worked on so far. The data patterns. It's an ECL bundle that's up on GitHub and all of that, but parts of it, including the data profiling and a couple other things, have been integrated inside the ECL standard library. And you can execute the profiling from ECL Watch now. That's all code that I've written. It's all native ECL code that will go out there and perform data profiling against data sets that have been loaded up in the cluster. That's been fun. I mean, that started out with one conversation. I don't know if you remember that, but you are the one that started that in a meeting. Yes, 5 years ago. You made a comment like, why can't we just, do this? And at the time you wanted like one thing. And that one thing, I was like, I can do that. I wrote it and sent it away. And then we were like, well, and you were like, well, you have this one thing, but you need to have this and this and this. And so, that's where it all began. It just kind of grew up from there.
That's how it starts always. And I hear others blaming me when I say, well, look, it's just one thing. So Now, the rest is implementation details. And so, yeah, that's exactly where the problem is. It's not just the one thing.
But that really has grown up quite a bit. So data patterns, so it's data profiling, but it's rolled into a module called data patterns. And there's 2 or 3 functions related specifically to profiling, but there's also a module for performing analysis of a numeric data set against Benford's law. There's also some data validation and repair functionality that's been integrated in with it. And I think 1 or 2 others, I can't remember, but like I said, it's an ever-growing kind of piece of software as we run across new functionality that people would like. We've been rolling it in, and it's just the typical GitHub pull requests and issues and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's where open source shines, right?
Absolutely, that's at the core of it.
Yep.
And the fact that you don't get to own the thing forever, which is the problem sometimes with proprietary code bases, right? Where because you are the one that owns and develops the thing, then you're stuck with it forever. Open source gives others the power to do that and to expand the community around it. So whoever needs it and wants to collaborate and wants to produce something, they can just integrate those pull requests, and it keeps going. The project keeps going and going in different directions that you wouldn't expect, perhaps.
Absolutely.
So and how do you think? So you mentioned the HPC systems approach to cloud in the 8.0 release and going forward there. So how do you see this evolving as HPC systems goes to a cloud? What are the things that you would expect or you would hope to achieve there on capability-wise or feature-wise? So what do you think, Thor and Roxy, how do you see them evolving into the cloud?
Well, I mean, the dynamic scaling nature of the cloud, I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to impact how either one of those engines really works. I'm not sure if that's really the point of it. So if you've got dynamic scaling around Thor and you've got Thor running as is, that's a pretty powerful combination, I feel, as it stands. Where I'm really looking forward to future advancement is greater integration with other tools, right? And other file systems and these kinds of things, being able to pick up, Parquet and S3 and, more of the data transfer, data lake type technologies, right? So we're going to be able to dynamically change our execution model. It would also behoove us to be able to more dynamically pick up data, manipulate data in a dynamic basis. And because some of what we do now is a little static as well, right? Predefining record layouts and things like that. So being able to pick up, at runtime, being able to pick up new jobs with new layouts and manipulate data on a named basis rather than like a field name basis, rather than exactly what is in this thing. I think that will be one of the next steps in the evolution.
So essentially point HPCC to blob store of sorts, and then automatically map the content of that with fields and produce a record layout.
Possibly.
That sounds very cool. That sounds cool.
I mean, yeah. And then there's the interoperability with the other, cloud services. There's a lot of very popular cloud services out there that we could leverage. Again, supporting certain kinds of data formats, right? So I think that's on the roadmap. Maybe not the official roadmap, but I think that's the direction that we may be going. And I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Maybe help that as well.
Hey, it did surprise me that you didn't say more integration with languages being something that you are interested in particularly. So I don't know, maybe Julia integration or...
Julia would be good. There's a couple of things I've had my eye on. It's kind of difficult. I mean, I see a lot of value with special purpose languages like R, right? Yeah. So they're more of a library, but they are a declarative language all on their own. They're not an imperative language. Imperative languages integration, you might as well do it in C++, right? Yeah. Unless you've got a big library to do it with. So yeah, it's like it depends on your use case.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So, I think we need to start wrapping up because otherwise it will get too long. But so, what would you tell either your younger self or someone else that is trying to get into data analytics or data management or data processing and is looking into HPCC, how should they approach it? I know that some of the biggest strengths in HPCC might look like disadvantages at the beginning when you find yourself needing to learn ECL, for example, and you come from a different background, right, in programming languages. So what advice would you give them?
Well, don't sell it short right away. Just because the language does not look like Java or C# doesn't mean it's bad at all. Declarative languages have a lot of power and offer an awful lot of performance enhancements for a distributed system on the back end that you can't see as a programmer. Getting away from imperative programming sometimes takes a mental leap. So that would be one thing I would tell an aspiring programmer, is to not be frustrated over the fact that it's not an imperative language. It's like SQL. You don't tell SQL what to do, or you don't tell it how to do it. You tell it what you want to do it. ECL is the same way. What I would tell an earlier self would be, don't wait so long to get in, because, I got in with HPCC 3.8, and to some degree, I feel like I was late to the party.
Well, by 2014, HPCC was almost 15 years old already, so yes.
I was very late to the party then, yes.
Yeah, that's very true. So I guess we need to close it now. It's really great that we are now here celebrating 10 years of open source HPC systems. I think there are so many things that happened in this community since the early days, and yes, you've been involved since 2014, which it's early enough in the context of 10 years. But even by then, there have been so many changes to HPCC since the release. And of course, since 2014, as you mentioned, there were quite a few new changes and reshaping of the platform, and now with the cloud frontier as well in HPCC. So it's great that we find ourselves here. It's great that we are still 10 years later driving this open source project, which I think it's giving a lot back to the community, the open source community, of course.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Great. It's been very fun, yes. Thank you.